Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bands, Beers, FPL. I feel like I'm sitting in like bright light, darkness and stuff like that. Just moved in a new flat, so trying to get used to the kind of viewing spaces and stuff as well in
I'm
future.
good. I'm the opposite. I mean, that seemed like I'm inside a light bulb by the looks of it. Right.
I know, I've just gone for like atmospheric, kind of Batman style. Yeah, so I mean, the less said about this week for me, the better, to be honest. Which we'll go into. I think we'll start with you pretty much because I think it's pretty good. But yeah, follow us on Twitter at Bands Beers FPL.
Yeah, once again, thanks for coming checking the video out. Make sure you like and subscribe while you're here at YouTube.
Yeah, feel free to hit us up with some comments, some chat, feedback. You know, tell us if we're rubbish, tell us if we're good, what we do well. Hit that big like button. Yeah, and say hello. Cool. So, how did your week go, Danny? Because I feel like you've had another green week.
Another good week. You can see my screen right now, can't you?
Yeah.
A little bit of a different approach here. Yeah, it was good, very good in the end. Slightly stressful. So I think the last time we spoke on here when we were talking about the transfers, it was, what was I looking at doing again? So Benrahma, why can I not remember my transfers? I can't remember who I took out for Benrahma. But I brought Calvert-Lewin. Oh no, I took out the two Fulham players. I was going to either do Andreas out or Mitrovic out. Really fancied Calvert-Lewin being so low owned, and I really fancied Benrahma being low owned, so that's what I ended up going for. In the end, so I mean, 77 points was very good. I'm very happy with my Salah captain, but that was, you had the opposite pain, as we'll see, because of the Man City team news getting leaked. So I had Foden, who I ended up benching. Whenever we got that news, I had Haaland captain, which I flicked to Salah. I think I was quite fancying captaining him anyway because we didn't really know what Haaland's minutes would be. So that worked out really well, getting his 2 goals. I was super chuffed that a 1%er, Benrahma, got me some points because nobody's got him. Almiron again, carrying on the form. Trippier, we love, but everyone's got Cancelo, the villain, who we'll come on to. Saka, fine to get something from him. DCL was a punt that obviously didn't turn out well. He barely got a touch in that game against Bournemouth and ended up going off injured anyway. I think I was just happy to get the 2 points for him. Like, he played 60 minutes. If that had been a minute before, then we would have got 1. So I think he's going to be coming out my team this week, most likely. So yeah, 77 points, massively above average, really good game week rank, and my overall rank is now into the top 10k. Whoop whoop, celebrate. 9,441. I think that's it's definitely a season high rank. I don't know if it's the highest rank I've ever been through a season, but certainly it quite possibly is. So out of nearly 11 million players, I'm buzzing about that. So the focus now is just to stay as close to that as possible for this one game week. And then we'll charge ahead after the World Cup when we've got a new squad, essentially. So I will not talk about how good I've done that much because I feel really bad because you had a pretty shocker. But it was good, very good. Shall we look at your team very briefly, or? Oh, you're on mute, man.
So I put as a hilarious brief look at my team.
We'll add a bit of context to this, like before I flick over. That the night before the deadline, we were on a video just like this talking about it, and we were talking about the risk of potentially captaining Haaland. And we talked about the other options, which for me were like Salah. I talked about Cancelo as a captain because he'd had 3 big hauls in his home games against the lesser performing teams, as we can see in his own information. Against Bournemouth, against Forest, against Southampton. So he was a really good shout for a captain. But it obviously went completely the opposite way for yourself. Yeah, talk us through it.
Yeah, so essentially, I think we talked about it the night before. My original plan had been to go to maybe somebody like Almiron if I had a feeling that Haaland wasn't going to play, and Almiron, who's been sort of like my player fantastic, which I did tip ages ago, and I wish I'd gone in earlier on him. But yeah, that was my plan, was possibly go Almiron, worry about Haaland when it comes and bench Foden, and then the news sort of came filtering through, as it does on Twitter, and we pay attention to it. But yeah, it was all over the shop. Some people had Haaland starting, other people had Foden not starting. Then slowly but surely, around about, I think it was about 1 o'clock, we started to get filtered in news that both Foden and Haaland weren't starting. So yeah, I was tempted to leave. I think I left my captaincy. Was going to leave my captaincy in Haaland and then put out vice captain Almiron, but our conversation the night before, and also the whole trusting thing that Cancelo would probably get returns and stuff, even if it was a clean sheet, it would have been quite a good return, especially at that kind of last minute reprieve from knowing that both weren't going to play. So yeah, safe to say, walking about, felt quite confident, was happy in my choice, and then I started to get notifications through from a few other mates who do FPL talking about Cancelo getting sent off, and yeah, pretty much ruined my Saturday. So not only is it that bad, right, that I had Cancelo as captain to get -4 points, I then went to, as we were talking about, look at the cup game this week, and I'm not even in the cup. Didn't even qualify for the cup because I was in the top 8 million or something ridiculous like that for the game week. So yeah, I don't think I'm in the cup this week either. So yeah, just to add insult to injury, which is great.
A bad week. I feel for you, man. Like, as soon as Cancelo had that challenge, I was watching it live. I just couldn't believe it. Like, I was instantly annoyed as a Cancelo owner, knowing I was going to get a minus. And then, obviously, I remembered, man, you went from captain. But it is one of those decisions that you make with good sort of thoughts about it. Like, it's obviously a punt, but the punt side of it is just that a defender could lose a clean sheet at any time, which obviously he did. But I felt he was hard done by, because I think Trent had a similar thing against Tottenham. Pure barged Sessegnon, didn't get a penalty given, didn't even get a foul. It wouldn't have been a red card anyway because it wasn't a goal scoring opportunity. But I feel like it was a bit harsh for the penalty and the red card to get given for Cancelo. Seemed like a bit of a striker's challenge, so that was poor. But at least he's back this week. He's not suspended because we had that cup game. That would have been.
I'm not going to lie. I'm actually tempted just to transfer him out of spite about how annoyed I am about it. But it shades of every time. I think this season, luck has really come into play for me in terms of just picking different players at the right time, or not picking them at the right time, and then them sort of banging. So like Salah not being in my team wasn't punishing me at all, and in the moments where I needed him not to, to keep blanking like he was, he suddenly turns into a world beater again. So yeah, it's frustrating because it's just that's the second time where I've maybe captained the defender and it's bit me in the arse, because that's like, if we remember the triple captaincy woes of when I put Trent as my triple captain last season, and Salah went on to have a stormer, and yeah, I can't even remember what Trent did, but it wasn't good. So yeah,
never again. Don't captain a defender again. Then is that what you're saying?
I think I'm pretty much set on that, man. I think, like, as a rule, I should have listened to myself before that. Although it's worth it, in the sense that you might get a clean sheet and that's 6 points, it's guaranteed doubled, 12 points, but it's just too dangerous. Like, too often they'll blank, too often they'll do stupid things like get yellows, too often they'll bite you in the arse by getting sent off. Like, it's just one of those things. But I think going forward, I need to be more certain in what I'm doing, and instead of like listening to sort of like the sub news and stuff, and maybe panicking a bit when I didn't need to panic, I probably could have left that and actually got more points, because I think I was vice captain in Almiron at the start. So even if Haaland didn't play, which didn't, it would have been Almiron my captain, and it'd be a completely different complexion in that. Not much, but enough for it to not be a nightmare. So yeah, I think going forward, things a lesson learned. It's if you think your luck will be bad, it probably will be. So don't do anything too risky. And as we spoke about before, like, I've been trying to do like a steady Eddie aim this season, is just to continuously grind through points. But that's maybe the second time I've been below average in a game week, and it's not good enough. It's not going to win me anything. So
yeah,
I'll need to revise, take time over the World Cup, and maybe look at what I'm doing and start trying to kind of catch up to the ground.
the question I've got before we sort of move on from that game week. Like, so do you think getting this leaked team news is beneficial or not? Right. So we've just seen two spectrums of it. Right. So it was very last second moves, and the servers were all crashing and stuff. I got my moves route through to get Ben Rama in and change my captain to Salah. Obviously worked out. You had the same sort of scenario where you're like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? You've made your moves and it's not worked out. Had both of us not had that news, say we'd been busy and we couldn't get on Twitter, so you would have had Haaland captain. It would have worked out a bit better. And then for me, I mean, I wouldn't have done terribly, but it wouldn't have had as high a score. So, like, so many people had disasters because you're literally put in that position to make a decision within minutes, seconds sometimes. So that's not a good way to be playing the game. So I'm kind of feeling I'm very lucky, but I'm like, tomorrow's the same. Man City are playing at 12:30. We might get news early. So I'm like, do I want to look at the news? I'm not sure, because I don't want to end up having this happen to me. Like, I think I got very lucky. So
I mean, I think it's no surprise to hear that, you know, guys like Magnus Carlsen, who's a chess master, is finishing highly every year, you know, because they're thinking about every move. And that tends to be why you tend to do, you know, better at this, because you like to plan a bit more long term, whereas I can be a bit more impulsive. So I think in that situation, I think you probably lucked out because you already had a plan in place for what you wanted to do. You weren't, you know, impulsively captaining a defender like me. So I think if it suits you if you're taking calculated risks. It doesn't suit you if you're impulsive. So I think for me, the lesson to be learned is to take a lot of this stuff with a pinch of salt. This time it just happened to be right, but how do you know, next time it might not be. There was a few big accounts that did get it right last week that are now were saying that he was going to start. They didn't get it right this week. So next week the accounts that were saying, you know, he's not going to start will maybe be given false information. So it's one of those things you have to kind of take it along with everyone else. But I think it's, you learn the lessons, those things you go along as, and kind of realise that making a snap decision to try and flip people in and out your team with the last minute when the servers might go down is never a good idea anyway, and especially when it comes to captaincy choice. So I think you should always plan ahead and not take risks that you haven't calculated. So like your decision making was slightly better because you were like, well, I have a plan in place that I want to do, whereas I was quite easily swayed by a conversation we'd had 24 hours earlier. Which was never in my plans in the first place. I would never have picked Cancelo before, but I myself became easily swayed because I was like, actually, that makes sense, you know. And I think that's important to try and remember to stick to a plan and not get carried away with the crowd. And yeah, like getting Foden on the bench was fine because you don't get that 1-pointer, but you know, the captaincy on Haaland thing really screwed a lot of people. So and you know, Haaland will come off the bench if he's fit enough to play, and he was going to be fit enough to play. We all knew it. Like, that was the thing that we knew before the game. It was just whether he was going to start or not that caused the problem. So I think if I'd just kept my head and not done the thing that I thought everybody else was doing, I probably would have been fine. So yeah, the lesson I would say is, you know, these leaks are fine, but take all of them with a pinch of salt, and also only take calculated risks that you understand what's going to happen, rather than maybe an impulsive last minute kind of out like I did. So
yeah, you're right, man.
yeah,
You're definitely right. Like, because you're right. Like, I did have a plan in place. Like, I knew there was potential things couldn't happen. So I had on my phone notes where, like, what will I do if Haaland starts and Foden doesn't? What will I do if Foden starts and Haaland doesn't? What will I do if both of them are on the bench? What will I do if both of them? And I had these, like, right, that'll force me into a -4. That'll force me into a -8. This will be Salah captain. This will be, if Foden was starting and Haaland wasn't, I probably would have captained Foden because it was such a nice fixture on paper. So, aye, yeah, you're right. That's the kind of thing that I think I spend most of my week thinking about my game week plan. Whereas you go away a lot of our chat and stuff and make your decisions last minute. So not everyone can do that though. Not everyone's got the time or the brain power to be sitting and thinking about FPL. I'm just a weirdo, man. But
no, I mean, I think I would do it a lot more, and I do enjoy it. And you know, I normally do have more time, but I've had a lot of big changes lifestyle wise recently, so it's been kind of tough to sit down and actually, you know, even in work, normally I'd sit and watch a few videos, you know, compile sort of transfers and stuff like that, and having as much time to do that. So it does punish you if you don't spend the time beforehand, you know, putting a plan in place and thinking about it. But yeah, and the other one as well is that I should have known at 1 p.m. that I really wanted to be sitting next to a computer screen and not wandering about the street, you know, and I think that's what kind of killed me. But cool, let's just go forward because I don't really want to talk about my terrible game anymore. How's things going for you in terms of transfer plans? I know you had a few kind of conundrums. One of the things I did want to talk about was the World Cup squads. So been listening to a lot of Talk Sport and stuff recently, and they were discussing the psychology around if you're picked for your team for a Winter World Cup, which we've never had before. You know, you're only given a week between finishing that game and then straight to the World Cup. So how do you approach that game? So somebody like Callum Wilson, you know, I don't even know if he's playing this week because he's obviously yellow banded, but is his brain going to be elsewhere? You know, is he going to say to Eddie Howe and be like, you know, I'd love to play this game, but also I'm not feeling my fittest. Don't want to ruin my chances before the England games in the World Cup, you know. And then conversely from that, the other thing that we spoke about earlier on, you know, like Tony, is Tony going to go out and absolutely smash it because he's desperate to prove that he should have been in that squad? So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about with you just now, and we spoke about it already. But what do you think in terms of, and not just England squad, you know, other teams? We have players in there, you know, Manny's just taking an injury for Bayern Munich. He might not make it for his squad. So I think, is it Senegal or something he plays for? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But how do you think you'll approach that? Do you think that'll affect things? Do you think players will be getting rested? You know, Harry Kane looks absolutely shattered. So how does that work in terms of like your planning for this point? What would you say advice wise?
I wouldn't go as far as thinking managers are going to rest players because of the World Cup, because obviously the Premier League is so important and every point matters no matter where you are in the table just now, this stage of the season. So unless there was actual proper fatigue for someone like Kane, which would count as an injury, then maybe. Wilson, it's a good point. If I was him, I don't know if players would want to like sort of like not fake injury, but he is injury prone as well, man. He's been injured so much in the last few seasons. So he's literally that one game away. If he, imagine he plays against Chelsea and then gets injured and he can't go to Qatar. So I get what you're saying. Like I have been thinking about it a little bit, but all my potential transfers in are players that are going to the World Cup, I think. So I'm just like, if there was players that weren't going to the World Cup, I would probably be going for them, maybe just ahead of it, because I feel like the ones that are now in the squad, they know they're on that plane. Are they going to be, is their head already going to be there a little bit? Are they going to be not sprinting as hard because they don't want to pull a hammy? Like, are they not going to go into challenges as hard? Like, is that going to then affect the rest of the team? But I would not think about it too much because, like, if you look at all the players that you've already got, right, most of the players that it's in everyone's squad are World Cup players. Probably like 80% of your squad are going to be going there because you're picking the best players in your team and they're going to be the best players in their country as well. So I'm just trying not to think about it too much. I don't want to just sway my decision just because that's coming ahead. I'm just trying to think this is a one game week to go. As I said before with the rank, it's just about sort of surviving and just having another average or better than average game week. But the psychology of it, yeah, the players, it will be in the players' heads whether they're going or not, and whether that affects their performance and then their team's performance is something that's up for debate. But in terms of like picking your team or picking your transfers, I don't want to overthink it too much because I feel like just stick to what we normally do is what I'm going to try and do is go with form, go with fixtures, trust your gut. Don't try and overthink it too much about the World Cup. Callum Wilson is a different one of concern because obviously he's still got this cold or illness or whatever. So it's tough. But for me personally, I'm just going to try and stick to what I'm wanting to go for, the form and the fixtures. Firmino is a player that's one, just when you're talking about Tony not getting into the squad, Firmino didn't get into the Brazil squad. Is he going to come out with an extra bite? Salah's not going to the World Cup. Darwin Núñez is obviously. So Salah's going to have that month off. Is he going to be like wanting to end on a bang? Firmino's got something to prove. Liverpool could be dangerous maybe going forward. So it's tough, man. It's tough to think about.
I think the major thing for me is I'm possibly. I've got Sav in my team, and obviously I would like to play him, but there is a part of me that's mildly nervous now that even, the yellow band obviously throws up, connotations because you're worried about the injury. But also, I really do think that Wilson, even if there's like a 10% doubt, I think he'll just be like, I don't want to play. I think he's not going to take the risk. Injuries too obvious. It's a week before. It's almost tempting fate. So I think there'll definitely be a few players. I mean, I don't think it's as widespread as I don't really see Kieran Trippier not playing at his best because he doesn't want to get injured or whatever. But I think looking at like Firmino, looking at Tony, thinking about their mindset going into these games is definitely making me think that I would possibly choose out Wilson this week as a transfer and bring Tony in. But we'll see what
Against
happens.
Man City?
Again, well, why not? I mean, Man City have, they're not prone to, like, look at last week, they were lucky to win that, even though it was a red card. But, they're not prone to losing goals. So they'll still score. People still score against them. So, and just because the defence is good doesn't make you say, like, Tony won't, score a goal. So
he's on penalties, he takes free kicks and stuff as well. No, that's a good, tasty outside punt. I think the fixture would put a lot of people off. But, like, if you've got Tony, hold him. And then if you don't, and you want a complete 1 week punt, that is probably the best 1 week punt that I've heard of all week. Nobody's been talking about him. So see if he goes and he scores 2 goals against Man City.
Because I'm not in a position to make that risk. So we'll see what happens.
He's going to hat-trick now.
But yeah, it's interesting. It's one of the things to think about. You've got to think about external pressures, psychology. Maybe not think too much into it, but just have a think about certain players. So, like, Wilson for me is probably going to go out my team just because I'm worried he probably won't start. And I say this now, and I bet he goes on and scores 2 or 3. But it just shows that you've got to think about how players are going to be acting, responding, thinking about their places in certain games and things like that as well. So it's maybe sensible if you're making transfers to possibly not bring in players that are in the England squad and might not try as hard as they normally would for fear of being injured. So that's possibly the point. So attacking players mainly. I mean, like, look at Madison maybe as an example. I very much doubt he's going to do anything that's going to jeopardise his dream of going to the World Cup, especially after his surprise inclusion. Gallagher's another. I know he's not going to be in many teams, but it's definitely one to maybe keep an eye on. What's your plans then? Who are you taking out? Who are you bringing in?
So we can see big red flag there, Calvert-Lewin. Either going to just do. I've got 1 free transfer, so I'm not going to be doing anything mega. Even if Foden or Haaland are benched, I'm not going to react. I'm just going to leave them. Calvert-Lewin to Darwin Núñez is what I'm sort of thinking about. My other option was to upgrade Johnny to a better defender, and I had my eyes on Perisic a lot this week, but I've kind of gone off that idea. I like the fact that he played in a front 2 with Kane against a tough team, Liverpool. He hit the post, he had the most chances created, his position was the furthest up the pitch out even including Harry Kane. But Kulusevski came off the bench, so he's now fit. He played midweek as well. Richarlison came off the bench midweek too. So the thought of Perisic being a forward as a defender, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. He might still play it like left wing back, but Spurs defence don't light it up for me. I was going to think about Perisic as a striker, would have been brilliant, but went off that. And then I would love to get Kulusevski in my team, but I feel like it's the midfield's a position I don't really need to change. Pretty confident Ben Rama will play, didn't in midweek. The rest of my 4, as long as Foden plays, like, that's got points written all over it, even though Almiron's against Chelsea. Haaland speaks for himself. I would like to have Solanke on, but if I do that Darwin move, then I think he's my bench. I don't really want to bench any of these 5. And then Anderson's just filling in that slot. So I think Darwin is probably going to win it for me. Quite an exciting pick. I don't really like over-investing in Liverpool, but it's for 1 week. Southampton are technically without a manager. I don't think their new manager has started yet, even though he's been appointed. They're pretty shocking as well. So if I was ever going to overinvest in an underperforming Liverpool, it's for 1 week. Darwin's due to get a haul, surely, isn't he? Like, he scored last week, and
don't start with pure. If I was ever going to invest in, you always invest in Liverpool. We talked
Nah,
about the
I mean,
past.
over-invest. You know what I mean? Like I've had Salah for
Yeah.
a while now, but I would not have been touching anyone else if it wasn't for just 1 week, one fixture. I don't think I'd want to spend 9 million on Darwin.
I find
Otherwise,
Darwin to be the most annoying, probably one of the most annoying players of the season because, like, objectively, his XG looks so good. Like the amount of shots he puts in, you're thinking surely he's going to be banging in goals left, right, and centre, and then you bring him in and he's just so disappointing. I do like that as a pick. I do think, like you say, I mean, it's hard because how do you tell? Like Aston Villa go managerless and win 4-0, but then that didn't reflect the game in the slightest because I think who was it we're playing again? Was it Wolves? Had something like 20 shots. They had like 20 shots or something ridiculous, and I think Aston Villa had 4 and scored them all. So, and then again next week they go out and get beat, and then they get their manager in, and they suddenly they win 3-1 against Man United. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. DCL's frustrating because this game against Bournemouth would have been perfect, I think, for him. So it's kind of a bit of a gutter that he's been injured and isn't going forward. The only other player that I kind of like, kind of forward wise, like Crystal Palace have got Notts Forest, and I know Notts Forest have turned the corner a wee bit, but Crystal Palace at home, tend to be not too bad, and I wonder if they maybe get a couple of goals with. But is French Eddie? He's not injured, is he? Do we know?
he's got a flag on him. Knock.
Yeah.
Didn't play the last
See,
game.
that's what I mean as well. That would have been my other kind of outlier that I might have looked at, but yeah, I'm not sure.
I prefer Zaha if I was wanting to get into Palace, but obviously he's a midfielder. So for me personally, I'm not making a midfield transfer. But yeah, I think Zaha's. I think you're right. There's goals in that game, definitely. Even the Aston Villa game, Aston Villa Brighton. I would love to have a midfielder spot to bring in like Trossard, possibly. I don't think I'm brave enough to go on a punt of Ollie Watkins or Danny Ings away to Brighton over Darwin Núñez at home to Southampton for 1 week. But I mean, if I was on a budget, if I only had 7 million to spend, then I would be tempted by Villa. I think even though they lost to Man United, I think there's going to be goals in them. I definitely am tempted by them after the World Cup. It's Firmino as well, like cheap. So
yeah, Firmino could be an interesting one. I don't know. I've not decided yet. I'm definitely going to take. I think Wilson's getting papped out. Or I might keep him, stick him on the bench, and then maybe transfer out Andreas for another kind of exciting midfielder that's got a plum, a plum tie. So maybe one of the Palace midfielders, possibly Zaha. Do I want to get back again? I really don't know. Like, just another one of these players that's woefully frustrating.
Depends how much you can afford, like because Arsenal have got a good fixture. I can't remember who your team is, but obviously there's Martinelli at a good price. Kulusevski, I would love to have if I could afford him and wanted to bring somebody out for that. Trossard, you've already got, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so good transfer in as well. Yeah, there's loads of good options in midfield, especially like I think this is the week to be going for someone really low, and that's why I went for Benrahma and DCL last week. One worked, one didn't. It's 1 week. Like, yeah, Martinelli, I don't think I would want to go for actually, even though I just said him in that nice price bracket. Go and spend your money on someone that's hardly owned, like Kulu, and just try and maximise those points, like if they score.
Yeah, I've got 8.5 million, so I can spend the money. So I just don't know if I really want to touch Spurs or it's another team that just really freaked me out, man. Like they haven't been playing well at all. Kane looks not a shadow himself. Son's injured. Kulu's a good shout, but can he do much if the team just on the firing? And like Leeds are at the minute, Leeds got a wee bit of purple patch. Cyril Somerville for Leeds. Could be another wee outlier. He's on top, probably in best form recently I've seen. And Spurs are no great shakes in defence, so could be an interesting one. Maybe Rashford, Man United v Fulham as well. So I'll have a look. He's another one I like instead of Zaha, maybe. I don't know. I mean, there is options. So, I mean, this game week I'm not overly bothered about. I would love to get an absolutely smashing score, but I'm not convinced it's going to happen, so I'm just going to play it tight and hope for the best, and then go into the World Cup and regroup basically. But yeah, we'll see what happens. What about captaincy? How you playing it?
It's currently on Haaland. I think I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to do anything funky. I'm really tempted by Salah. He's obviously done really well for me in the last 2 weeks. He's outscored Haaland and Kane and stuff like that. So he's I've got a growing love for him again, even though he's been rubbish all season. But I don't see Haaland not starting. Like, I know Pep said today that he's a little better. He was on the bench for Chelsea midweek. If he was fit enough to be on the bench for that game, he's surely fit enough for this game. He's got a month off now. It's not like he needs to be wrapped in cotton wool. It is Pep though. So I think I'm not going to let Man City team news and stuff like that depict my transfers this week, but I will look out for the team news and I'll keep it on Haaland just now. If he's on the bench, I'll flick it to Salah just purely because I want to be captaining somebody who's going to play 90 minutes likely. So that's the only doubt I would have over Haaland. I wouldn't flick it to Foden. It would be Haaland to Salah. So, but I'm hopeful. Yeah. But we said this last week. We had the same conversation. I was going on about how seen videos of Haaland in training and he was twisting and turning like his foot must be fine, but Pep said it has some slight ligament damage, so maybe that could be niggling, or maybe he's been training this week and then that's got worse and that's why he's seen he's a little better. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up benched, but I'm going to just risk it.
Nah, I can't see it. I mean, I say this now, he probably will be, but I just think like the reason he didn't play midweek is nothing to do with fitness. I don't think. I just think that Pep wanted to rotate the squad. And I think obviously not rushing him back probably helped as well. But I definitely think he's going to play. My slight worry is Foden.
He didn't play midweek either, I don't think. So surely he's for all right start now. Like,
well, what's going on though? We don't know. I mean, why has he not played the past 2 weeks? Do you know what I mean? Like, clearly he's done something.
Oh.
So
well, he's been playing in the Champions League midweek. It is odd though. Like when Pep was questioned about it, he's just like, "There's no reason I've benched him. No reason. He's got a squad. Like, you know what he's like, man. He doesn't give anything away. Has Foden pissed him off or something? I don't think so. I think he is just moving his squad about. But
do you know what it is? I think something maybe mentioned to him that Foden's played every game, and he went, "Well, I can't be having that." So
exactly, Pep Roulette.
Probably like that. No, I need to punish him now. Yeah, I think captain wise, I'm going to stick with Haaland, and I'm going to vice captain Trossard. I think, and see how that rolls out. Trossard against Aston Villa. He's like, come on, man, he's going to do something surely. I'll set him on that and see what happens. I might go a wee bit, to type and maybe go Jesus against Wolves. I have a feeling he's going to bang at some point, and this could be the game because I don't think Wolves are that great at all, even with their new manager and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's pretty much. Anything else you want to...
Well, just on Jesus there, he was in my mind as a transfer in for DCL this week. I can afford him. Really tasty fixture. He's an outside shout if I don't want to over-invest in Liverpool. I think the only reason I started turning my head towards Darwin over Jesus was just the ownership. Just wanted a punt for 1 week. But I agree. I think Wolves are definitely there for the taking. Like, Arsenal got goals in them. So, yeah, he'll be a good pick. Good shout for captain outside if we get any news about Haaland. So, we'll see.
I think Trossard or Jesus are going to be my vice, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't necessarily care as much anymore this week. I just have to. Just want to get my points in. I'm not going to run about trying to get last minute team news and all that. I'm just going to play it nice and steady. See what happens. I'm not going to panic too much. I mean, if Haaland comes off the bench, he's going to score. Let's face it, he did it this week. So he'll do it again. Anyway, that was a good one. So give us a follow on Twitter. Give us some comments below. Give us some chat. Say hello. Tell us anything really. And yeah, we'll catch up after the World Cup. We do some videos during the World Cup. See what happens.
Yeah, enjoy your last game week before the World Cup. We'll probably do World Cup fantasy. I've not really started looking at it and figuring it out. It's obviously a lot more different than this kind of vibe where you've got 1 week decisions to make. There's a lot going on in the World Cup. I tend to play it and then get a bit fed up. So think we'll give it a bash. We'll get a wee league going. It'll be a bit of fun, just for a bit of fun anyway, and we'll keep the videos up so we can keep talking about the ongoing sort of wildcard picks before we get to the 26th of December. I can't wait. Boxing Day and FPL is going to be back, full fixtures, Christmas and all that.
Well,
Right, cool.
Christmas Day.
Yeah. Oh, you've gone.
Mistakes thing about FPL, know what I mean? Yeah, I could actually do that a Christmas present of getting some points, you know. But yeah, that would be a good one. Yeah, we're also probably at some point going to do some beer and band videos around it. So if you're interested in that, let us know. Any band beer recommendations, hit us up. We are very Scottish orientated, but we are more than happy to take some English, Welsh, Irish, Northern Irish recommendations. So yeah, keep in touch and have a good game week and catch you.
Thanks for joining. See you later.